Welcome back to Jedi Enclave. I'm Daniel.
I am Chris.
We're two nerds trying to find our way into the universe, and you wouldn't even guess how many times we've had to redo this opening because I just can't do it. Anyway, we're glad you're here with us. We've got some pretty cool Star Wars stuff to talk about. I suppose you could do us a huge favor and drop us a like and subscribe. It costs nothing.
Like it.
Yes, I mean, this has to mean something to someone somewhere in the world. So if that's you like it, we would really appreciate it. Last week was a bit of a dry spell with news. Mm-hmm. Dry enough that we recorded our Palpatine hate mail. There's some really exciting news this week, and this is a bit of clarification on a thing that we knew was coming for a long time.
Project Luminous.
Yeah, which when that dropped, we were like, "The fuck is Project Luminous?"
Yeah, because there were a long list of names of people involved, but no details about what any of it meant.
And they're like, "It's a thing with Star Wars."
Okay, I'm cautiously excited.
And of course, every Star Wars fan in the world is like, we obsess about this every day. We need to know now what it is.
Yeah.
Well, they finally told us.
Oh, good.
As it turns out, it is. It's officially announced. We knew that it was a multimedia campaign that was going to involve novels and comics. At least we guessed that it was. They've kind of officially announced this as an epic storytelling initiative, filling out the story 200 years before A New Hope.
Epic storytelling initiative is way more corporate speak than I want in my Star Wars.
It's a bunch of buzzwords.
Yeah,
I kind of saw the same thing. It rolls off the tongue very nicely, but that was a focus group approved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is what it is: new books and comics, and apparently that's all books and comics. But it's from a happier time of the Republic.
Okay.
So the galaxy isn't at war, which is how we're used to Star Wars happening.
I mean, it's right there in the name. Right. Star Wars.
Yeah, there's a Star War happening. Apparently, everything here is hopeful and optimistic. The Jedi are highly respected and noble, but also newly minted. Right, which...
That's a change from the old expanded universe where Jedi existed for millennia.
No one even knew when they started.
Yeah.
I think the reason is because that in the old canon, that stretch of time is stupid.
Yeah.
That technology wouldn't have advanced at all, more or less, because they had vibroblades, but they didn't stay with them very long. They ended up having lightsabers, and nothing changed technologically.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of years. So I'm glad they're kind of restricting the time period a little bit. It makes it a little bit more believable.
Going forward, it's a little bit more restrictive because it means there's less space to put your stories in. But if they do it right, it could be great.
Yeah, they could just keep packing stuff on before, the caveman Jedi. So this is planned in several phases. Starting with Light of the Jedi, which is a novel that Charles Soule is going to write. Now, that name means a lot to us because we've been following Star Wars comics a lot.
Mm-hmm. And he's been writing most of the best stories, I think.
They are really, really cool. We're going to talk about one of them today. Yeah. I'm excited to see. I have never read anything that he's written novel-wise. Mm-hmm. I assume he's good, though, because everything else that he's written, I've been kind of hooked on.
You'd think. Yeah.
So it's going to be followed. So they're going to have phases. And the way that I read it, it was going to be kind of like the MCU, phase one, phase two. Yeah,
very Marvelous.
Yeah, which isn't bad, It's going to be followed by other titles, a couple of them called Into the Dark and Test of Courage. We don't know what the fuck they're about, but they're titles.
Okay.
Yeah. So this whole thing started out apparently with they had a retreat, and someone asked a question and said, "What scares the Jedi?" And that started the brainstorming writer's room, if you will, for the entire thing. It served as a guiding principle. Yeah. What are the Jedi scared of? Which automatically I'm like, ooh, that's... Well, we know it's the Sith, but I don't think the Sith exist yet, even.
I think the easy answer is the dark side in general.
Yeah, and scary things.
The Sith perhaps embody that most solidly, but...
Sand.
Yes.
Probably sand.
Yeah.
Apparently, so they asked that question, it started their writer's room thing, and so they're like, okay, well, we have to answer this question, and then everything in between, we'll fill it in. And apparently the answer to the question is an anarchistic group of marauders known as it's either NIL or Nihil.
Nile, maybe?
Nihil. Oh, yeah, like Darth Nihilus, maybe?
From what I heard about this, they're basically space Vikings.
Oh, yeah.
That
Okay.
they fly around, they pillage, they raid, they move on.
Like Hoth from the... do you remember that? Did you read the Darth Bane trilogy?
Oh, I read like one of those books.
There was a Jedi named Hoth that, like the planet,
Yeah.
that had like... It was more or less a Viking.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, he seemed pretty neat. Oh, we mentioned here The Light of the Jedi, which is the book that Charles Soule is doing. And so we don't know very much about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
We know it comes out in August, which is cool. It's not that far away. It's right around when like the next Mandalorian is coming out and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So what we know about it is there's a sensitive Wookiee Jedi.
Cool.
By sensitive, I mean his feelings are hurt really easily. I don't know, or maybe he's really sensitive to the Force.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
But,
And a human who hears the Force as a song,
okay.
which to me, they're in this writer's room, they're like, okay, so everyone feels the Force, like we get that, so we need to make this a little bit different. And what would be a really unique way for a Jedi to communicate with the Force? Hearing it in song, pretty neat. Because like Mace Windu's got the Shatterpoint thing where he sees like all the like fault lines and everything. And like I've always like taken that to understand as him actually seeing like little fault lines and stuff. So it's kind of cool that they're trying to be inventive with a Force connection where like they're trying to explain how it works without like bringing midi-chlorians or anything into it. Like a Jedi's own perception of how they
Yeah.
connect to the Force instead of being like scientific about it, which I thought was pretty neat.
So this isn't directly related to anything you're talking about. It's just something that popped into my head. If the Jedi like began 200 years before current Star Wars canon, and Yoda was like 900 when he died, what was he doing for the first 700 years?
I don't know. Being a Jedi?
But the Jedi didn't exist.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. That seems to create a plot hole here, doesn't
I mean,
it?
at that point in his life, he would have already been a well-known Jedi. You would think after 700 years,
If the Jedi exist.
maybe Yoda like invented the Jedi.
Maybe he did.
Yeah.
Which
probably
would
not.
also make any revelations from Mandalorian very, very interesting.
That's a good point.
I wonder how much the Mandalorian writers were cross-pollinating with the High Republic writers.
The last thing we know about this is apparently there is a disaster that happens in Light of the Jedi that ripples across the entire galaxy, and all of the other stories involved in this project. It's felt in all of the other stories and how like the galaxy responds to it. So something really big happens, like Godzilla destroys a planet or
Yeah.
something, or like Star Wars Godzilla, or something big happens, and it's going to be more or less explored in different ways, which is a kind of a neat way to tie everything like into the same universe.
It's also going to make this first book required reading for everything that comes after.
Yeah, that's a great marketing.
But I mean,
yeah,
you're going to read it anyway,
yeah,
right?
that is true. I mean, shit, they're going to get me to read the Rise of Skywalker novelization, so they're going to get me to read fucking anything. I'm thinking about a couple of different things with this.
Okay.
First of all, I think it's awesome. I think it's just what the Star Wars universe
It's
needs.
more Star Wars.
Yes. I appreciate the fact that we don't know the end of the story already. So like we watch Star Wars, then they start making the prequels, but we already know what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of freedom with what they're allowed to write. Things can be a little bit more of a surprise because no one was that surprised in Revenge of the Sith when Anakin fell to the dark side. They weren't surprised when Mace Windu died. You know, they weren't surprised at all these things that we were like,
Yeah.
that had to have happened. So I'm glad that like there's something fresh, which I think is great. It looks like we're gonna get to see how the Jedi like came to be, which I think is really cool too.
That's something that I'm very interested in as well.
It kind of the other thing is that, like they're creating their new canon. So I think people were, in a way, understandably upset when Disney was like, all the canon you know is not canon anymore. Fuck off. And then they put out some movies that people were, you know,
They were divisive.
Yeah.
Let's say.
So I think now they're filling out their own thing now. And I think they've hired some really good people to fill it out. So I think they're going to be good stories. And I think you're going to find that fans are forgetting a little bit more about all of the little stories from the Legends period or whatever. Like, we're always going to remember Dark Empire, or like the Jedi Search, things, or like Admiral Dalla, or like all of this like stuff that we like. But I think it's going to take our attention off of that big missing component about Disney Star Wars so much, which is all we have is 3 trilogy movies, a couple spin-offs, and who the fuck else knows.
It's like the New Testament without the Old, if you pardon the religious metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the big thing that jumps out to me is that when Project Luminous was announced, I believe they were also talking about like television shows or movies or video games being tied into this. Mm-hmm. Have they announced anything about that?
They haven't announced it. We've talked about some rumors that are going around. So far, officially, all we know is that it's comic books and novels, and that's going to be the end of it.
So I'm curious as to what other tie-ins they have. Because, like, yeah, you can tell great stories in comic books and novels, but I think Disney, at least, is going to want to get as many opportunities to merchandise as they can.
Mm-hmm. And do some, like, visual stuff.
Yeah, and like, if the people at EA get a hold of the stories and say, hey, that's really cool, we could do something with that, or just something to spark their imaginations, you could very easily see a video game or two out of this.
Yeah. With probably microtransactions.
Probably.
Or not anymore. After Battlefront 2, they're probably like, the Star Wars crowd, we can't fuck with those guys. Like, they'll tear us apart.
Like, they'll find a way to get microtransactions in there, but it won't be, like, completely in your face. You must pay us every time you play.
I paid the $20 celebration pack for Battlefront, and I didn't care. It was fine. I had the $20 to spend. So there at home, you there watching, we want to know from you what you like. What part of the old canon do you want to see, or is there a story that you're so attached to in the Star Wars Legends universe? You're so attached to it that you want to see it reinstated, or I guess retold, kind of like how they did Thrawn in Rebels.
That, from my understanding, that was less of retelling an old story and more taking aspects of the old canon and just applying them to the new.
Yeah, so if there's an instance like that you would want to see, or
a cool character, a plot line, a place.
Yeah, a certain lightsaber.
Yeah,
whatever it is. Make sure you let us know. Make sure you also drop a like and subscribe to our channel, because we work really hard on this. Well, we work as hard as we want to work on it, which is why it's perfect. We just kind of started this out of nowhere. It's been a ton of fun. So, try to support us. It won't cost you anything, and it'll mean everything to us. We have a podcast, on SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you get to hear us talk a little bit more about some stuff Star Wars. Other things are just me rambling on about, the new Terminator movie or something. Yeah. So it may or may not be about Star Wars. So thanks for spending your time with us. We love you guys. We'll see you in the next video.